Hi guys, I'm not doing green screen for my videos anymore right now because my computer is acting up and it takes too long to edit them to put the green screen into that, so I'm sorry. I don't have anything fun behind me and I don't know how long that's going to last. Okay, so let's get on to the recap. Okay, the episode starts with Jack wakes up on the island, very reminiscent of the very first episode of Lost. He kind of wakes up and is like, realizes that he's like there by himself, but then he hears someone calling for help. He gets up, he goes off to where this lagoon is, where Hurley's like screaming for help because I don't know why he doesn't think he can't swim. Jack dives in, helps Hurley, then they see that Kate's over on the far side of the lagoon. They go over and then they wake her up, and she's like, are we here? Are we back? And Jack's like, yeah, we're back. Okay, so now it's 46 hours before that event. If you remember, Jack and Son and Desmond and Ben were in the church with Eloise Hawking. She says, follow me, and she takes them down into this, what looks like a Dharma Initiative station, and she says, the Dharma Initiative called this place the Lamppost, and in this place is a big pendulum, and it's swinging back and forth over a map of the world. She explains a bunch of scientific and mathematical mumbo-jumbo about the electromagnetic energy that's below the place and blah, 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 blah. The end result is that the pendulum can point to where the island is. She's like, this is how the Dharma Initiative found the island. The pendulum points to where the island will be at a certain place in time. There are certain windows that open up for you to be able to access, like to get onto the island. She says, and the next window closes in 36 hours. Desmond hears this, and he goes over to Eloise and says, Faraday asked me to come and see you because you're supposed to help these people. Not Jack, not Son, not Ben. You are. She's like, but I am helping, dear. He's like, okay, I've had enough of this. I'm not going back to the island, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave. He goes over to Jack and says, these people are playing a game, brother. We're all just like pawns. Whatever she tells you to do, just ignore it. And he goes to leave. And Eloise says, the island's not through with you. He's like, well, I'm through with the island. And he leaves. She says, okay, so Flight Ajira Airways 316, she tells this to Jack, is the plane that's going to pass through the window where you'll be able to get onto the island. And he says, so what do we do? She says, you need to best recreate the circumstances that first brought you to the island, which means you need to get as many people that were on that original flight on this flight with you. So basically all the Oceanic 6 need to be with you. He says, well, what if we can't get all of them? She says, well, then the outcome would be unpredictable. Vague bitch. Like, what? Okay, thanks. That's unpredictable. Okay, good. I should mention that when they first came down and they saw everything like this, like Jack turns to Ben and he's like, did you know about this place? He's like, no. And he asks Eloise, he's like, is that true? She says, probably not. So Ben's like a liar, like whatever. But anyways, Jack says, so that's all we have to do. She says, no. Not for you. You have a special thing that you have to do. She takes him into, I assume it's like her office or whatever, some kind of office or whatever, and she hands him Locke's suicide note. It's addressed to him, Jack Shepherd. She tells him, like, okay, you're going to take Locke's body with you on the plane. Locke's body is going to be a proxy. In other words, a substitute for Jack's father's body when he was on Oceanic 815. She says, you also need to find something of your father's to give to Locke. He's like, this is ridiculous. She's like, stop thinking it's ridiculous and start thinking whether or not it will work. He's like, okay, everyone's loony. I need to go back to drinking. He goes out into the church. Son has already left. We don't know why. I'm assuming maybe it's because she's going to go home and like pack, or I don't know. Because she's, thinking that Jin is still alive, so she's going to take whatever chance she can to get back to the island to see if he's alive. He goes out and asks Ben, like, why is this all happening? And, like, who is she? Why is she helping us? And whatever. And Ben basically tells him the story of Tom the Apostle and how Tom the Apostle didn't believe in the resurrection. He had to actually go up and touch Jesus' wounds to be able to understand that it actually did happen. He couldn't wrap his mind around it. And Jack says, well, was he convinced? And he says, of course he was. Sooner or later, we're all convinced, John. And he says John, not Jack. He's like, okay, I have a few things I have to go take care of. I'll see you at the airport. So the next scene is Jack's at a bar, sitting with a drink. He hasn't drank it yet, but he gets a cell phone call, so he doesn't drink it. So that scene's quick and over, because someone on the cell phone, I guess, needs his help. He goes to a senior home where his grandfather is living. His grandfather has tried to leave the senior home a couple of times, and the orderly's like, if he does it again, he's out of here. We can't have that. He takes his grandfather back to his room and sees that his grandfather has packed a bag. Jack goes through the suitcase, and he comes across a pair of his father's shoes. His grandfather explains, oh, that must have got mixed in with my stuff. I got a bunch of his stuff when he died. And Jack's like, can I have these? He's like, yeah, sure, go ahead, take them. So he goes home, and he's in the kitchen, but then he hears his door open, and he's wondering, like, who's in his house? And I'm like, it better not be Ben, you know? But it wasn't. So he goes into his bedroom, and Kate's, like, on the bed, and she's, like, upset. He's like, Kate, what the heck are you doing here? She's like, no, she's not crying. She says, are you still going back to the island? He says, yeah, yes, I am. She says, okay, well, then I'm going with you. He says, well, what about Aaron? And she says, listen to me very carefully. She says, if you want me to go with you now to the island, you will never ask me about Aaron again. Promise me that you won't ask me about him. He's like, okay. And then they do the nasty. Bow, chicka, bow, bow. Okay, the next morning, like, they have coffee and talk, like, blah, blah, I don't know. And then she leaves because Jack gets a phone call, and it's Ben. Ben is all beaten up. He's at a phone booth, and he's like, there's been a delay, and I'm not going to be able to go get Locke's body from the butcher shop. Please, you're going to have to go do it. Jack's like, you know, like, I have to do everything in this damn series. Jack goes to the butcher shop to get Locke's body. He opens the casket, he pulls out his father's shoes, he puts them onto Locke, and he's like, Locke, wherever you are right now, you must be laughing your ass off, because this is crazier than you were. And he takes out Locke's suicide note and puts it in the coffin with Locke's body. Now, at the airport, Jack's getting his ticket, making the arrangements to have Locke's body, you know, put on the plane and transported, because the plane's going to Guam. And then eventually Sun shows up, and then Kate shows up, and then they see off in the distance that Saeed is there too, and he's with some woman. And Saeed and the woman are walking off towards the gate that they need to go to get to Flight 316. In the waiting area for the plane, Hurley's like waiting and whatever, and the little woman that's announcing whether or not they're boarding the plane or not says that the people who are wanting to fly standby, there's probably not going to be any problem because there's all these open seats. And Hurley's like, dude, no. He runs up and says, I'm Hugo Reyes. Look, I bought all 78 of those seats. And she's like, oh yeah, you did. Sir, why don't you want these people to travel? He's like, screw them. Okay, so they all get onto the plane, and before Jack takes his seat, one of the stewardesses comes up and says, sir, you know, while they were going through the coffin to make sure that everything was okay, we came across this. You must have either, you know, forgot it or whatever. It's Locke's suicide note. And he's like, you know, I can't get rid of this damn thing. They're all on the plane, and at the last minute, Ben comes on the plane. He's still all jacked up. And no one asks him why. No one offers him, like, you know, like a moist towelette to, like, wipe his face up with the blood and whatever. No one offers him an aspirin. They're just like, oh, you know, Ben's all beat up. We see him that way half the time anyway, so it's like, you know, the normal. Okay. They all take their seats, and they're sitting up in first class. And Jack looks through the back of the plane and asks Ben, you know, like, what's going to happen to the rest of these people? And Ben's like, who cares? You know, like, the show's not about them. It's about us. Like, are you stupid? Are you dumb? Okay, they take off. They find out that the pilot of the plane is actually Frank Lapidus, the guy that was piloting the helicopter that went from the island to the freighter when the island disappeared. Jack, you know, talks with him, and he comes out and sees that everyone's there, and he gets he's like, oh, okay, well, you guys are all here. We're not going to Guam, are we? And Jack's like, no. Okay, so several hours into the flight, Jack and Ben are sitting in the back of first class, and he looks over at Ben, and Ben is like reading. And he's like, how can you read at a time like this? And he says, my mother taught me. Which is a lie, because his mother died having him. So, you know, that Ben's just a liar. Like, I don't believe 90% of the stuff that he says. Jack's like, you know, oh, the only reading material I have is, you know, Locke's suicide note. Did you know he killed himself? And he's like, no, I didn't know he killed himself, no. He's like, I'm going to give you some privacy so you can read that. Jack finally breaks down, opens up the suicide note, and Locke wrote to him, I wish you would have believed me. That's all that the note says. So then there's turbulence on the plane. Hurley's telling the guy across the aisle, he's like, dude, you probably want to buckle your seatbelt. Because he's all like, you know, this is going to be like a cool ride, okay? Turbulence, shaking, and then a time flash on the plane. And that's where the very first scene happens. They show the first scene again. Jack wakes up, he goes and rescues Hurley, they go and wake up Kate, and so they're like, where's Sun and Saeed and Ben? Where are they? They're not here with us. And they don't remember crashing, they just remember being on the plane and then suddenly on their island. So they're like, okay, this is crazy, like, you know, whatever. And then up drives a little van, and out of the van pops a person wearing a Dharma Initiative jumpsuit with a rifle. And then they're like, oh, I know him. Jin? It's Jin. It's Jin. Remember, they think that he's dead. They're like, Jin? And that's how the episode ends. If you're lost, so am I.